Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the voice of reason. Today, we are continuing our ongoing coverage of the war between the Russian Federation and Ukraine. And first, because of recent events that have been taking place in the Republic of Moldova, there's been talk about the possibility of some sort of Russian-backed coup d'etat or coup taking place in Moldova with supporters of the Russian Federation inside of Moldova and obviously the Transnistria region as well. And that could bring about a possible amphibious operation by Russian forces in or around Odessa. So first, let's eliminate that. The likelihood that we will see a Russian amphibious operation taking place near Odessa, or any Russian amphibious operation taking place at all, is zero. The areas under control by the Russians of Ukraine consist all the way east of, obviously, Mariupol, well west of the Crimean Peninsula. This area here is the only area where we could possibly see some sort of amphibious operation. Now, the problem is Russia no longer has control of any territory on the western bank of the Dnieper River. If Russian forces hypothetically land east of Odessa, west of Odessa, there are many beaches that the Russians have the ability to land in these areas. Problem is, many of these beaches and areas are covered by some very advanced Western-made long-range rocket systems and anti-ship weapon systems as well. Compounding that, the Ukrainians have reserve territorial brigades reinforced in these areas as well. So the Russians, if they're able to circumnavigate the threat of anti-ship missiles, and again we have seen the Russian flagship of the Black Sea Fleet sunk by an anti-ship missile. So again, the probability, and that was essentially the fleet air defense arm as well. So if the Russians were able to launch an amphibious operation towards Odessa, the likelihood that they would take significant casualties is very, very real. Compounding that, the likelihood that they would have a successful landing or securing of a port area would be incredibly challenging. And then third and finally, maintaining control of that area without any support from Russian land forces moving in west of the Dnieper River makes it an incredibly difficult operation. Look, it's highly likely, if the Ukrainians wanted to, they would have the ability to even launch an operations against the Transnistria region. And there's very little that Russian forces could do about that. It would be very, very difficult because of the Russian force compositions that exists in Transnistria to really resist a concerted Ukrainian push into this area. Now, obviously, there are political ramifications that prevent the Ukrainians from doing this. But from a military perspective, it's very likely that the Ukrainians could launch a fairly successful military operation into Transnistria against those Russian units. Now, again, back to that amphibious operation near Odessa, very difficult. And that essentially was eliminated. Any form of further Russian amphibious operations taking place was eliminated when Russian forces withdrew from the western bank of the Dnieper River. Just not going to happen. Now, with that being said, we are continuing to see Russian forces pound away at Ukrainian lines. We have heard over the last 24 hours there has been relentless multiple launch rocket system barrages against Ukrainian forces. We even have a reported breakout in which Russian forces are now maneuvering in certain rear areas of Ukrainian forces, and this could be obviously west of Severodonetsk and north of Bakhmut. Now, that hasn't been updated or displayed on this map. This map is and happens to be a Ukrainian supporter map. They do a fairly good job of updating movements and seizures of territory. That's why I tend to use it. If there is a better map that exists, obviously I would use that as well. But this is what we have for right now. But again, we're also hearing reports of massive ammunition shortages by the Ukrainians. It would appear that the United States is going to start tripling production of munitions to send to the Ukrainians, because even the United States is starting to run thin on munitions, especially 155 millimeter shells to send to the Ukrainians. We know that the United States is pulling munitions from sources even outside of the United States at this point, to include Israel. So it looks like the United States is starting to ramp up production. Again, probably in that neighborhood of anywhere from 20 to 90,000 155 millimeter artillery shells a month may be needed. And that's what the U.S. could start producing. But again, that's kind of where we sit right now. Again, the likelihood of an amphibious operation taking place near Odessa, very, very low. We continue to see this offensive operation, this growing offensive operation by Russian forces, again, in the eastern Donbass. But again, I think we will probably see ultimately a much larger operation by Russian forces in late summer. We could see this really start to pick up speed in terms of degrading and destroying Ukrainian forces, especially given the issue with lack of supplies getting through to the Ukrainians, especially in heavy artillery. They're running out of artillery, and they then have two options. They can continue to exchange fire with the Russians, die in place, or withdraw. And it looks like, at least in certain areas, the Ukrainians are starting to pull back. We are starting to hear, at least within the area of Bakhmut, north of Bakhmut, that the Ukrainians have gone silent. So that usually means that something bad has happened. Something within the military realm, something has happened. So we'll see what that looks like in the next day or two, if in fact Russians have achieved a breakthrough in certain areas, and we'll definitely report on that and continue to cover it. Thank you for joining us today. More to come very, very soon. Have a good day.